This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Boz Digital Labs, and JZ Microphones. So get ready to rock.
If I have two guitar players, boom, I'm ready to go. If I have one guy and I want to record him stereo out of his effects pedals, that's also another great thing because nowadays guitar players have so many toys to play with and their stereo effects can be really cool. You know, the delays and the reverbs. Why not capture that going in instead of me sitting for hours trying to mix and find a sound?
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. This episode is sponsored by OWC, Otherworld Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, your trusted source for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and used Macs for your studio. Let OWC focus on keeping your studio Mac in killer condition so that you can focus on making great music. Why ditch your existing Mac when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and learn how you can supercharge your studio Mac, the speed to create, the capacity to dream. Now find out how awesome your studio can be at OWC. This episode is sponsored by Boz Digital Labs, offering you the coolest plugins for your mixes like the Hoser XT and Plus 10 dB Signature Series. You can transform your drums with Sasquatch Kick Machine or Transgressor, get massive bass with Big Clipper, or add width and depth using Mongoose and Imperial Delay. All Boz Digital Labs plugins are available as fully functioning, no time limit free trials, so you can check them out on your mixes right now. Just go to bozdigitallabs.com or click the link in the show notes of this episode. This episode is sponsored by JZ Microphones with the unique Golden Drop capsule design. The Black Hole Series BH1S and BH2 microphones with the hole in the middle for a one-of-a-kind shock mount combine innovative industrial design with careful craftsmanship to bring a world-class sound to your studio, resulting in a level of quality and detail in your recordings that you won't find in other mics. Go to jzmic.com or click the link in the show notes below and use the limited time coupon ROCKSTAR right now to get an incredible 50% off. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Lee Turner, a Wisconsin-born musician now living in Nashville and owner of 222 Studio, dedicated to helping artists easily navigate the recording process with a focus on bringing pro Nashville players and sound to anyone making a record, whether local or over the internet. While Lee can play everything in the studio, his primary instrument is the keyboard, playing piano, organ, and even accordion. He splits his time between the studio and playing live, touring the world with Darius Rucker. He's also had the honor of performing with a long list of top-tier artists to include Blake Shelton, Hank Williams Jr., Kenny Rodgers, Big and Rich, Leanne Rimes, Trace Adkins, Wynonna, Randy Owen, Cowboy Troy, Bice, and many more. He's also performed on Jimmy Kimmel, The Tonight Show, Ellen, The View, The Talk, The Today Show, and Good Morning America, and has been a member of the house band for the hit show Nashville Star on both NBC and USA for the past 5 years. Thanks so much to Michael Estock for making our introduction. Please welcome Lee Turner to Recording Studio Rockstars. Lee, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm ready to rock, Lid.
Man, welcome to the studio and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me here.
It's quite a list, man. As I was trying to get through all those names, it's an impressive list of stuff you've done.
It's
how long have you been in Nashville?
Yeah, I've been in Nashville about 23 years now.
23,
and
right
I've been with, you told everybody about Darius, and I've been with Darius Rucker we're going on our 11th year, which is really amazing. And then many artists. Darius actually makes my 25th artist that I've played with, like Nashville Star. I was introduced to a lot of artists playing for that. But yeah, I've been in Nashville doing the artist thing for about 23 years.
Right on, man. And you came down from Wisconsin. I
Yes.
love Wisconsin. I go up to Door County every summer.
Oh, right on. Yeah. No, I have my got my music education degree in Wisconsin there, and I thought teaching was great. I think students are great. Just for me at that time, I wanted to do something else. So I moved down to Nashville and decided to, pack everything up, move down here and work for a country music artist. Everybody told me I was crazy. And about 2.5 weeks later, I had a gig with a guy named Kevin Sharp, who was on Asylum Records, and I was on a tour bus, and the rest is history.
Nice, man. And so you came down sort of as a keyboardist first, like totally. I was saying in the intro.
Yeah.
So were you coming from like Chicago, or were you sort of small town Wisconsin, or?
Right around Milwaukee. I spent a lot of time in Milwaukee, and then up in Appleton, playing in bands. So when I was 16 and old enough to take the car, I was playing in bars.
Nice.
So my Thursday, Friday, Saturdays were, Thursday night in a reggae band, Friday night in a pop band, and Saturday night in a 50s and 60s band, and Sunday morning I was playing trumpet back at church, So it was always music and always working.
Playing trumpet too, wow.
Trumpet was my that was my major instrument. I started I was a trumpet player, and I always played keyboards, and that was something that made money. So that was a general shift. I saw that being a trumpet performance major wasn't going to work out maybe financially, and so I went into education, and keyboards were always there. So it was a natural shift in that direction, and that's what led me down to Nashville.
Nice. Well, so you come down to Nashville to do country. Were you already really into country before you moved here, or did you come here just to?
I was a rock guy. I was rock and pop, keyboard world. But at that time, a lot of the stuff, I was like, oh, these chords are totally relatable to country chords, and the feel. I mean, we're talking that was late 90s.
Yeah. Right, late 90s. So Jason and the Scorchers, the rock meets country, that was late 80s, right?
Right.
Was that a thing for you?
No, it definitely wasn't. I was more mainstream, the Garth Brooks and, Susie Boggess and all this stuff. And it just worked, and it fit underneath my hands really well, and I was able to play and slip right into it. I enjoyed the people. The people in country music are great, and I really was embraced by the community really quick and found myself just getting from artist to artist. I've never been let go or fired from a gig. It was just always just trying to work up the ranks to a better job and keep it going.
Nice, man. Well, don't mess up on this podcast.
I know,
it'll be
right?
First time. Right? Just kidding. Hey, by the way, Garth Brooks, Rockstars, if you've never seen it, Garth Brooks did a skit on Saturday Night Live with Will Ferrell, where he plays Will Ferrell's the devil, and Garth's like this aspiring songwriter. And it's just hands down like the funniest musical skit I think I've ever seen on TV. So I highly recommend you check that one out.
It's awesome.
So you came down here to be a musician first and tour. How long till you started getting into the recording side of things?
Probably 3-4 years into it. Honestly, I got my first computer, and it was a Windows computer, and I had a piano. So my idea was, why don't I utilize my time when I'm at home and record my piano stuff myself? So I got a sound card, and it had 2 inputs, and this was a big deal back then. And it had enough processing power to handle everything. That was going great, and my buddy came over to play some acoustic guitar one time, and he just said to me, he says, hey, would you be able to lay down some acoustic guitar while the piano went down? And I said, I don't know, let me figure it out. So I bought a bigger sound card, and then we went to 4 inputs, and you see the progression here, and then we went to 8.
Do you remember what that software was that you used on it? Was it Cool Edit or something like that? That's the first Windows one I remember using.
Honestly, don't remember what it was.
It's funny because, we take so much of that for granted now. I mean, I just bought a Behringer UM2, I think it is. It's like a little USB thing on Amazon. It was $29, shipped to my door, and I could just plug it right into a laptop, and it's like, there's a couple inputs. But back then, my buddy had a PC, and then he tells me about this card he'd heard of, and we buy a digital card, and it didn't even have audio inputs. You had to go through my DAT machine and then go digitally from the DAT machine, transfer it into the computer.
Right.
and then like do edits as 2 tracks at a time. Just quite different.
Yeah, quite different. And you had to worry about pops and clicks back then, because the processing wouldn't hold up. And yeah, it was quite a challenge.
Well, so anyway, so you're playing acoustic guitar with that. Now you have a beautiful studio, 222.
Yeah.
Have you had some iterations of studio from then to now, or did you leap from a sound card in the 90s to a studio today?
No, I never did a leap. I always bought one piece at a time, and that was something that I'm proud of myself for doing that, because I feel like I grew with the equipment. I was able to grow myself. And by that, I mean, I didn't go and spend a bunch of money and then have a pile of equipment and then go, now let me try and figure it out. It was always like, well, let me record piano, let me record acoustic. Well, now the obvious thing is to start recording vocals. Then how do I mix that all together? I don't have any technical training as a recording engineer. Being a musician, I love music. I know what I hear. So I had a lot of downtime on the road back in the day to go down in the basement and sit on this piece of software. It was Nuendo at the time is what I ended up getting. And just turning knobs until I figured out, hey, this works here. And, the powerful internet was not that strong yet. And so I just learned that way. And then it was the progression of, now I want to record drums. How do I do this? What microphone? So I reached out to people and talked to people and got, answers on, hey, this might be good. Good microphones to put on drums. And I even got some I got some pushback at that time. Like I was recording in a living room, and one guy with low ceilings, and a guy said to me, that'll never sound good because it's going to sound like you're in a bathroom. I'm like, well, dude, this is the space I have. So I've always been one to make do with what I have and grow, like figure out what cables I had to make this work. And sometimes it wasn't conventional. But so anyway, so I grew equipment, and then I went through a couple of things in my life where I packed that up and it went into storage. And then when I got this space now, my goal was to have a studio where everything's plugged in all the time and people can just come in, and I am ready to go. So it's really cool. And I'm utilizing the space that I have. I'm in a downstairs of a ranch home, and the garage is our live room. And I've taken out, anything that was in the ceiling. So the rafters are like really cool diffusers. I have a Gretsch USA kit, Craviotto snare, Black Beauty snare, everything's set up. I play every day. I'm horrible. But I'll come home from the gym and I'll be like, yeah, I'm playing drums today. Yeah.
Drums is one of those instruments like that. I feel very comfortable sucking on drums and still feeling great about it.
And it's fun.
I don't always want to hear myself back after I mess around.
Right. So that's in the garage. The drums are set up in the front. We utilize that garage. And then when I have a session, I roll the cars out, roll some nice rugs down. And then I make stations for everybody. There's a bass station, there's a guitar station, and with that, there's 2 cables that go to amp boxes. I built boxes inside of boxes with some nice ribbon mics on them. Everybody's on headphone boxes. My piano stuff, I've got an awesome Yamaha upright piano. Hammond B3, everything's mic'd up all the time. All my other keyboards are subgrouped down, submixed down. I've got a vocal booth underneath the stairs, and it all just
That's
really
cool.
works.
I like that. I like it. We roll the cars out. It sounds like somehow I feel like Elvis is about to arrive at the session.
I know, it's pretty funny.
Well, so that's cool. So you basically created a sort of like this combination home studio functional environment or whatever, where you can totally accommodate musicians. And I know lots and lots of our listeners everywhere are dealing with a situation like that. Some listeners are some of the rock stars are just recording themselves. Some of them are trying to accommodate a band, but I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to use a space. You mentioned something. You talked about a box within a box. Talk about that a little bit. That's a really clever way to have sort of guitar amps and have a band tracking together in a space that isn't big enough to have separate rooms for every guitar, right?
Exactly. And I came up with this a long time ago. It's nothing that I designed, but I thought about taking the guitar, the speaker cabinet, and building just out of plywood or press board and putting that in a box with some, I guess, Orlex or some blankets around it, just so the reflections are cut down.
Can you describe the box a little more? What does that mean, a box?
Box.
We're picturing a cardboard box here?
No, I took the dimensions of the speaker cabinet, and then I put around about 4 inches around the sides and around the top. And so the speaker cabinet can drop down inside of it. I put the baffling a little bit in front of it. So like I said, the reflections bouncing off the wood get soaked up. Drilled a hole into that so that way the mic cable can go in there and the speaker cable. So then I was like, that's great, but I want to deaden it or quiet it down even a little bit more. So what I did is built another box, another 4 inches bigger than that. I know, it's crazy. And then I dropped that whole thing into it again, drill in the holes. So, and then I just put a top on it with a weight and some blankets.
Isn't that called a Russian guitar cabinet?
I think so.
Okay, cool, man. So
yeah.
That's a cool concept. So the boxes aren't a whole lot bigger than the amps.
No.
So it's not like you need to eat up half the room building something.
No, and actually I have them both in a closet right now. So they're side by side. We can have a guitar player or 2 guitar players totally cranking, and they're back into this closet a little bit away from the drums, and there's 0 bleed, which is really awesome.
Okay, and so you put a mic inside the box that mics the cabinet. So everything's pretty close quarters in that box.
Very close.
What do you discover about the sound? What have you learned about, like, do you have to dial your amp slightly differently for that to work on the recording, that kind of thing?
Right. Most people walk in, and I noticed a big difference when I went over to, I'm using the Cascade ribbon mics in there. And that was a game changer, and it seemed to really warm things up and take away any, there was a weird distortion that I was getting that was not describable. I had it on SM57. I had it on one of the Sennheisers, and then Michael Estock actually told me, he says, dude, go out and get some of these microphones. They were like $200 each. We put it on, and without any EQ, without changing anything, the sound drastically got better. And I was like, oh, that's what I was missing. So we just found the sweet spot in the box, and I don't move those microphones. Now I've got a 112 cabinet and a 210 cabinet. So there's a difference in the sounds right away, and we can just switch speaker cabinets real quick. If anything, I've heard that there might be a little bit of low-mid buildup. And that is easily taken care of. Now I'm working with the Apollo stuff, Universal Audio, which is basically like having a console on the way in, and I'm able to dial a little bit of that out. Nobody even
just a little bit
anything.
of EQ takes care of whatever that is.
EQ, absolutely.
Yeah, which is, I mean, obviously, I think we enjoy when we don't have to do an EQ. We feel pretty proud of ourselves if we put a mic on something that's like, it sounds perfect without EQ.
Right.
But I mean, equalization is, as it's invented, it's sort of considered a corrective tool.
Right.
So when you put a mic close to something, you get proximity effect, and the EQ sort of compensates for that. So makes perfect sense to use it that way.
Yeah.
And plus, you're doing subtractive EQ on it. Probably you're pulling a little bit out.
Yeah.
And there's that argument exists. Subtractive EQ is better than additive EQ. Whatever.
Right.
But okay, so that's very cool. So it's nice to be able to set up so easily. And I like how your cabinets are like, you don't even have to put the mic up or plug it in.
No.
You just plug in. You just plug the amp head into which cabinet you want to use.
Right, and I've actually got amps available at the studio. I use Valve Train amps, and it's like a tweed throwback. Most guys will bring, and I tell guitar players, go ahead and bring your heads along, and most times they hear what I have, and it just works. So everybody knows and I've got 2 available. So if we want to do if I have two guitar players, boom, I'm ready to go. If I have one guy and I want to record him stereo out of his effects pedals, that's also another great thing, because nowadays guitar players have so many toys to play with, and their stereo effects can be really cool. The delays and the reverbs. Why not capture that going in instead of me sitting for hours trying to mix and find a sound? Let the players do what players do.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me. I really try and hire players that bring the sound that I want, and not only just play the right notes, capture the right feel, capture the right sound, and just have a great vibe for the session. It makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, no, and I agree. When I get a chance to work with great players, it's always so rewarding. You just sit back, you're like, man, that's great. It's like you're doing more listening than doing stuff,
Right. And as you know, after you get these guys in there and you have great takes and you have great tracks, and they walk away feeling good about the session and you feel good, your mix down time is going to be a lot less. Your editing time is going to be a lot less. And honestly, the project is going to sound better than trying to create something out of something that's not that great.
Right. Well, here we are in Nashville, you know, a place where you've got real instruments playing with real singers.
Right.
So obviously players and musicianship is an important part of actually creating the sound of a band in the studio too. Mm-hmm. Where did the guitar players stand on a session? Are they in headphones in the same room with the drummers? Do you like to have the guitar players listening through the speakers in the control room if their amps are isolated?
This is a great thing. So I've got my quote unquote live room, the garage, and in there I've got the drums, and then I usually put the bass player and the guitar player in there, or if I have two guitar players, or sometimes the steel. In that live room, I've got the headphones that are, and I'm forgetting the name of the company. They're like the gun mufflers.
Right. Extreme isolation, and stuff like that.
So everybody can listen on headphone mix. I've got hearbacks for everybody, the hearback monitoring systems. So everybody, those, bring the sound level down so they're not getting beat up by the drummer. And they're actually able to hear themselves. And then in the control room where I'm at are all the keyboards, and then there's a vocal booth. And if I need to record acoustic guitar, I'll put myself on headphones in the control room, and I've got a microphone in there that the acoustic player can just go to town in.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. It's funny, the experience of sessions where you're listening through speakers in the control room versus sessions where you're listening through headphones in the control room, because you're recording in there as well. And it's one of those things that I remember it was surprising and maybe took a couple of tries before I finally learned it. The control room, your control room is a perfectly usable space to record something in. You may have a singer who prefers to sing in the control room and get away from the band. You might even be surprised to discover that you can have something recording like a vocal in the control room, and you don't need to be in headphones. You just have the speakers on. Sometimes it's a scratch vocal or whatever. But rock stars, I encourage you to remember that that's a usable space. If you're in a home studio, you're probably using it all the time anyway.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. And I just came up with something the other day, and I've been recording for a while now. I was laying down a B3 track for a client, and I do a lot of internet work where people hire me to play. I've done countless albums for John Taglieri up in, where is he, out up Northeast, and we never are in the same room together. Well, anyway, so I was doing a B3 take, and I was playing B3 before I started, and I was like, man, this sounds amazing. Put on headphones, and even though I've got everything dialed in, I got my B3 in stereo in my headphones, but it's close mic'd. And it was just something missing. And I was like, you dummy, put up a nice room mic. So I've got these stairs that go upstairs, and it has kind of a little bit of ambient thing going on. So I threw a room mic up there, cranked it up, and all of a sudden, right now the hairs on my arms are standing up because it was so good. I'm like, why haven't I been doing this? And, I sent the tracks, and I actually printed that room track on it, and the guy was like, man, your B3 sounds so good. So, like now I'm doing it on the piano, the same place. And
so you have a real B3.
Real B3, yeah.
And what about the Leslie?
Real Leslie.
Do you know which model is it?
It's a 122.
122, okay.
Yeah.
It's
a 122. It's mic'd up, ready to go. And now this room mic is
so while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to give a shout out to a new Hammond tech that I just worked with here in Nashville named Ray Hubbard.
Okay.
And he came to me through Seal Keyworks, which is down towards Franklin, I think. So I know rock stars, if you're not in Nashville, it's probably meaningless to you. But if you're anywhere close and you're looking for a great tech, I do recommend calling Seal Keyworks and having Ray come into town. He just fixed up I have a Hammond 101 and a Leslie is maybe it's a 122, but it says 147 and written on a sticker. So I'm not sure which one it is right now, but it's pretty tall. Yeah. And he made it sound great. This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can go to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level. And you can start right now with my free introduction to mixing course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you are in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. So let me get you to dig in a little bit more into how do you mic up a Leslie. So for the rock stars who are listening and they're like, they go into a studio, let's record the Leslie. Oh yeah, what do I do now?
Right.
What's a smart way to mic that thing up?
So typically what guys do is they put something on to capture the low end and then 2 on the top. So the low end, you might want to put like a 52 on it or something, or like a kick drum mic. Let's just simplify it. And then on the top, grab 2 SM57s and put them pointing towards the top rotor.
Each corner or something?
Each corner, yeah. So they're equal distance, and you have to, think about phasing and that type of thing, but just throw them up and see what that sounds like. Sometimes you have to be careful of wind noise because there are moving parts to this. So like, let's say your player or you kick up the rotor or the Leslie, you're going to get. So if that's attractive to you in your recording, great. But I'm going to guess it's probably not. So angle the microphone so that way you get rid of that wind noise. Because what'll happen is your keyboard player might forget and not spin the Leslie down, and that's an unwanted noise that you don't want to be recording.
It'd just wind noise just in the middle of the track.
Exactly.
Okay, so cool. I'm glad you brought up 57s because, having a choice of microphones here, I've tried different things, and you think condenser mics. I mean, I remember when I went to school at MTSU, they were like, we pulled out stereo AKG 414s for the top, stereo AKG 414s for the bottom, stereo ones for the room, stereo, it was like a bazillion mics. And I don't think it sounded very good either, but I don't think we knew how to play the organ at the time.
Okay, well, sure.
But here I remember doing a track and then just quickly putting up a pair of 57s. And this was an organ that needed to blend in with a full band sound too. And I was like, holy shit, that sounds great. It's like the perfect mid-range. Yep. You don't have to do a bunch of stuff to it later at mix.
Now, and then there was one time where happy accidents happened in the studio, and having your control room, because I have the B3 in there, I was going really quick through the headphones on hit record, and one of the tracks was on the acoustic guitar mic, which was sitting next to me. And it had this cool sound, and I ended up printing that for. So, I mean, use the close-up mics for the B3, but definitely experiment with a room mic and different placements on that, just to add color and character to it. Yeah,
I feel like the close mics give you, they definitely give you the stereo effect. So if you're doing stereo top and you want to pan them left and right, you get that big wide organ thing, and you get the speed up, slow down.
Could be really cool on choruses to help, widen things out.
Yeah. But the room mic, like when I do the room mics, that's where you get the deep purple growl going.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. That's where you get the big heavy weight of it. Very cool. So let's see, what else was I going to say about that? The other detail about it is I learned recently that the low drum spins the opposite direction from the horns up top.
Right.
I think I remember learning about that from Ray. I was like, oh, they go a different direction.
Uh-huh.
So there you go. And then I just got a half moon switch installed on mine. So you put that on there, where before I was using one of those pedals that like sort of interfaces, or a 1/4-inch cable goes from the organ into the pedal. Right. And the pedal has the speed switch on it. But the pedal also has like a gain control. And that's, if you have a pedal and a Leslie, that's what you can use to plug a guitar into a Leslie cabinet. Absolutely. Or like, you know, plug some other mic and get like, you know, the piano through the Leslie sound, like Pink Floyd Metal and stuff.
Good
How's
stuff.
that name for name dropping?
I know, right? Good stuff.
All right, cool. So talk to us about some of your other keyboards that you play there. I know you play accordion too, but what else you got?
I play accordion. I've talked about the Yamaha upright that I have, which I simply dropped 2 DPA mics into it, which are small microphones, and they're really cool. That allows me to keep the lid closed because I am in the control room, and just kind of takes out more noise in the room.
Let's dig into that a little bit. Sure. So the DPAs, they make these tiny microphones that look like they would be a lapel mic, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So is that the size of the mics you're using? And so where do you drop them in? Where do they hang? How would you describe where they should go?
So I open up the top of the piano, and then on each side I found, and I played with this a little bit and took time to listen back to what I was getting. And they're about I would say about a foot in on each side. Just kind of makes a nice little stereo thing going on, and all the notes are represented equally. There's no spot that sticks out. It's very balanced.
So if they hang in through the top, are they sort of closer to you in the front wood of the piano? So are they like more up against the wood on one side?
They're up against the strings, pretty close.
Pretty close to the strings, all right.
Yeah. They're pretty incredible because, again, I really didn't have to do much to those.
Do you know if they're both Omni mics? They probably are,
I think they are, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's just that process of, you know, and it's a benefit if you have your own studio, because then you can take some time to move things around until you're like, I like that, and then leave it set up. And you talk about, do you also keep your drum set mic'd up and ready to go, or is that something you have to set up?
No, that's always mic'd up, ready to go.
It is, okay.
Which is cool, because if I'm doing a mix down of something and I'm like, oh, I need a cymbal swallow or something else or another hit, I'll just go out and play it myself. Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Dude, that missing fill.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, man. I was just dealing with missing fills recently.
Or the end of the song, if they want to close the door on it, you know, put a boom in it. You know, I've already had somebody who doesn't play drums go in and do that after the fact. Or a tambourine part, just go to the overheads and it's ready to go. And that's something I've also built up with everything being mic'd up. I've built an awesome template. So, you know, workflow is so important in a studio. And I think if you want to get, not if you want to get good, but if you want to get efficient in doing things, get a good template, get something that works and go to it, and then improve on it. Be like, hey, this worked really great this time. I think I'll go back to the template after these people leave and change it. So the next time I've got this. Yeah. So everything does stay set up, and you know, the template's ready to go for that reason. All
right. Well, so this prompts many questions for me.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about templates, why don't we just talk about that a little bit more?
Sure.
So the template can mean a number of things. It can mean a starting place when you're about to record the band. It could mean a starting place when you're going to mix. Do you have separate templates for the recording and the mixing, or do you just have one that you record into that becomes the mix as well?
Right. No, this is good to clarify. No, for me, a template means a starting place to record the band. So that means that all my inputs, so I've got 3 Apollos that are plugged in full of stuff at all times. So I've got 24 channels ready to go. So everything, my kick, snare, snare 2, if that's a, you know, bottom snare or a side snare, hat, tom 1, tom 2, your overhead left, overhead right, room left, room right, those are all ready to go armed, grouped. I mean, I've even gone and grouped them so that way when I arm them, I'm not arming 10 tracks. I'm just hitting one button and it's ready to go.
And does a template include, with the Apollo, does it include the actual mic pre-gain settings as well?
I do. I've got that. That's separate in the console setting. And I've got that template ready to go also. That's just kind of a work in progress. I wouldn't even call that a template.
Right. Because every drummer hits differently too.
Say that again?
Every drummer hits differently.
Absolutely. So that's a lot of, on the fly gain staging, working on the gains and how it sounds and what song you're recording. But going back to, I use Logic. So everything, all my inputs are ready to go. And then it's also being ready to be mixed. So I've got my preset kind of go-tos. Like for a vocal, I want to have an 1176 and a LA2A ready to go. So I don't have to go searching for that plugin. They're there. They're not armed, but I just turn the power on and then I can quickly go to that.
All right. So do you use the 1176 and the LA2A together?
I do.
And which one goes first?
The 1176.
That's my world too, man. I do the 1176 first.
Yeah, it just
something
works.
about that sound. If I record a vocal without the 1176 in there, it'll sound great. But if I want it to be a little more in your face and a little more like, front forward of a rock band or something like that, just drop that 1176 in there and it just snaps it right forward.
It's really cool. And I've tried different thing, and I've tried Waves Vocal Rider, and sometimes that works. Sometimes I don't get it to work really great.
We want to know a funny side note?
Yeah.
Your voice that they're listening to and my voice right now are going through Waves Vocal Rider.
Oh, I mean, it's
by the time this is mixed.
It's the best plugin ever. Sorry.
No, it's great for, I don't use it yet on music in the studio.
Right.
But I use it completely for mixing the podcast because
that's cool
for two voices, just trying to keep the voices keep the levels really clear. I'm very proud of myself. One of my goals for the podcast is that Rockstars, you can put your phone on speakerphone, set it down, walk around the kitchen, and clearly hear our voices wherever you are.
Absolutely.
And that's not true of all podcasts. I will say that.
That's very true.
So that's one of the things that I really try and aspire to is just make it really easy to hear what we're saying. So now it's up to us to say something good, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So you've got this template for the recording side of things. What about effects? Do you just sort of have any particular effects that are always in the template and ready for the recording stage?
In the recording stage, yes. I've got singers always, there's an exception to this rule, of course, but 9 times out of 10 want some reverb on their voice when they're going down. Now, this is a special challenge that I ran into early on back in the computer days where we didn't have something like the Apollos and we could add reverb but not record it. So how do you do that? That was a special challenge. So yeah, I've always got a reverb ready to go on the vocal. I don't print that. That is just for their headphones and make everybody comfortable. But that's it. Everything else is just EQ'd and sounding great in the headphones. And that's the way it goes in. My goal, I think being a musician, I would go into studios and sometimes I would be very frustrated at the quality of the headphone mixes. And I think it's very important if you're recording to set up a great headphone mix for your players, because that'll translate into better performances. That'll translate into everybody being a little bit happier because they can hear. Another great thing is communication. And I'm a big one. Let's communicate about everything nowadays. And how does the band communicate? So I've got these big headphones that isolate everybody from everybody else. And how do they talk to each other now? So I've got Talkback Switches in front of each station with little microphones, whatever I have laying around, like the 57s or an old PV that I've had for 20 years. But those microphones feed into the musicians' hearback, so they're allowed to communicate quickly and easily without having to slip off headphones and just, again, workflow, making things happen.
Super cool. That's something that I remember discovering in Nashville. And I've never had the talkback switches. I've come up with some other versions of that, but the key takeaway is making it as quickly recognizing on a session or on repeated sessions that communication is slowing down the process, or people not hearing each other is very frustrating, and coming up with a solution. So can you break that down a little more? Are you talking about talkback switches? Is this something we go on Amazon and buy a talkback switch? Is it something you had to build?
Okay, this is somebody, a guitar player, Brian Nutter, built for me probably 15 years ago. He said, this is what you need. And it's a small little stomp box that you just press it down and it engages and turns your microphone on.
But it's like momentary. If you lift your foot, right?
Yeah, you raise your foot and then the signal goes away. So that's who built those for me, and I've held on to them for years. And they're just great. So
I think a cool thing about that is, so Rockstars, a way to think about it is, if you turn up a mic for a talkback and you're trying to just crank it up so that everybody can hear, the problem is, somebody hits a drum or plays a guitar chord and all of a sudden it blows everybody's heads up, or it blows up your speakers in the control room. And when you can have the talkback switch on an additional, 57 or just some simple, cheap dynamic mic that's up near their voice, it makes it easy to hear what they're saying because they're turning it up. It's loud only in that moment.
Another thing I do, even on top of that, is put a limiter on it.
Right.
Because the drummer inevitably is going to have his foot on the switch and he's going to go to play that fill and everybody's going to go, ah. So if you can just squash that, that'd be great, And
so these mics all feed into just a cheap mixer or an extra little Mackie mixer or something like that?
Mackie 1604 that I've had for years.
Okay, cool.
So they all just submix down to that, and then they go one channel into the Apollo.
And you just put the limiter on an insert of the Mackie or something like that. Or you could put it on the Apollo.
I do it on the console nowadays, but yeah. Back in the day, I had one just on an insert.
Okay, cool. So one other aspect of it that I feel like I should mention is, as a musician, when you're trying to communicate with everybody and you're talking, it sucks when you have to feel like you're yelling over the band, or you just give up. You're just like, I'm just going to wait until dude stops noodling on his guitar and then I'll talk, So these mics make it easy for somebody to in a comfortable volume, say what needs to be said so people can hear it. So it's a cool idea.
Yeah, because you're basically running the show a lot of times, and if you're on the clock or your client is paying by the hour, you want your musicians to be efficient so you can kind of call the shots, and it's an easy way to for everybody to talk to everybody and get things moving. Another thing, speaking of communication, is I use video cameras in the studio.
Is there line of sight or is there not line of sight?
No, there's not line of sight.
All right, cool.
So
talk about that.
My control room, you actually go through a bathroom and a laundry room out to the garage. So there's this nice buffering space for the drums, but there's no line of sight. So I'm like, I really want to have a visual on people. So this would be as you were looking through from your control room to the singer behind a plate of glass. Let's just imagine that. So what I did is I went to Best Buy, bought a 4-pack of security cameras, and then I hooked those up. So there's a camera on each player, and then there's a TV in the control room with a box with, the 4 cameras on it. So I can see everybody. And what the cool thing about that is there was one time where everybody was being quiet. And I was like, all right, what's going on? And I look over, easily I can see that the guitar player's tuning and everybody's just waiting for him, rather than jumping on the talkback and going, all right, come on, let's go.
Come on, what's the deal, guys?
Hey. And then vice versa, they have a TV out there, and then I have one camera on the room so they can see me, they can see the client, and it creates a good vibe. It feels like everybody's together rather than isolated in a room and you're like, is anybody listening to me?
I remember, I think it was the Bennett house out in Franklin was the first place I saw that, where a control room had a little black and white TV, but it was very old school,
Sure.
So, and I'm intrigued by that because I've thought about that before, and I've thought, wouldn't it be cool to have little video feeds where you could see what people are doing?
Yeah.
Talk about, so you described what makes it useful and good in the studio. Talk about some of the challenges that you run into when you were trying to pick the right one, or was there a weird delay happening in the video feed between what you hear in there what do you run into? What's it not good for? What's it great for?
So price was an issue. And I wanted to keep costs low, but yet go for something that works. So I went with wired. I had to run wires for the cameras, which is no big deal. The wireless cameras, there's lag time. So I wouldn't suggest those. Like I have them on the outside of the house. There's like a 3 to 5 second delay depending on how strong your internet is that day.
Yeah, right. But that's good to know that the wired ones are both cheaper and actually quicker.
I think I got this 4-pack for like $175. And
I'm going to go get one.
They just work. You turn it on, there's nothing to deal with.
Maybe I'll run out and go buy one during the jam session
you
break
should,
here.
Yeah. And another thing is they're hooked up to a hard drive and they constantly record. I never look at it, but God forbid if I would ever get broken into or something, I'm going to see who's taking those drums because I got you on video.
Well, I mean, think about all those times something just magical or really funny happened in the studio and you're like, man, I wish we had it. There was times where I was like, man, I should hook up mics that are just recording 24/7 so I can rewind and go capture that moment.
Yeah.
That perfect intro to a song that didn't get recorded or just the funny joke somebody told. Okay, cool. So really can you watch somebody do a count off on there or watch somebody like do a fill and land together?
Absolutely. Endings of the songs are a great example for that. You might do a big retard at the end and then who's cueing it. So we decide before, or even if I'm playing piano. And another beautiful thing is I can actually play along with the players that are playing in the live room. I can cue the ending or give them a count in or a hand gesture or something like that. So that's a totally useful tool.
Okay, very cool. All right, I think I might have to consider that here. So you, again, it's probably 2 systems. It's 4 cameras out there that are wired into the control room and wired to a screen for you to see. So you probably have a separate computer monitor or screen monitor that's
separate
up
little
to
TV.
see those cameras.
Yeah, I've got a little 32-inch. And then in the live room, I've got I think a 40-inch with 1 camera on the control room.
Right, and that's, again,
and
a
it's just
hardwire
hardwired in and,
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's fun.
Groovy. All right, well, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in just a moment for the jam session. We'll dig more into the ways that you're recording your instruments, your drums, your accordions, your guitars, your basses, all that stuff.
Sounds great.
And we'll dig into some of the deeper topics of making records. Rockstars, a reminder, we've got links to stuff we're talking about in the show notes at rsrockstars.com, or just click through on your mobile device now, and you'll find links straight over to Lee's website. You can go listen to some of his awesome records and hear his work. We'll see you in just a minute for the jam session.
All right.
Are you using a Mac in your recording studio? Are you tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly? Wouldn't it feel great to have a trusted friend to help you keep your existing Mac and studio setup current and relevant so that you can focus on the thing you love most, which is making great music? Well, now you can rely on OWC, Otherworld Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, whose mission it is to help you get the most mileage out of your existing Mac. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD drive, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac that's ready to rock, OWC will help take your studio far into the future with a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49. Why get frustrated and ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. If you want to design and build a great house, then you're going to need great tools. You could build it with an old hammer and some nails, but it's a whole lot easier to use an air compressor and a nail gun. Well, the same thing goes for mixing. If you really want to create a pro-sounding mix, then it makes a lot of sense to start with a great toolbox of awesome plugins. This is where Boz Digital Labs comes in to help you get killer mixes easily, quickly, and creatively. Provocative will make your vocals sound lush and wide. Transgressor and Manic Compressor can help your drums leap out of the speakers. Gating Weighty Weighty and Big Beautiful Door offer unique new ways to tighten up your tracks, while the Wall will make sure your mixes are in your face and competitive. And my favorite is Sasquatch Kick Machine, which can transform your kick drum from sounding like a home studio cardboard box into the perfect punchy kick without using samples or triggers. To download your unlimited trial of any plugin now or get one of Boz's free plugins, go to bozddigitallabs.com and put the best in your mixing toolbox. Click the link below in the show notes to learn more. If you want to capture every nuance of a great performance in your studio, then you need to start with a microphone that is crafted with great care and attention to detail. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia designs amazing sounding microphones that are handcrafted with jeweler's precision to bring you incredible detail in your recordings. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique Golden Drop capsule design, which uses a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity while avoiding distracting colorations and distortions. Make sure to check out the Black Hole series BH1S and BH2 with the awesome looking hole in the middle of the mic, combining innovative industrial design with meticulous electrical engineering to help your studio sound incredibly expensive for an affordable price. JZ offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, if you use the coupon ROCKSTAR, you will get an astonishing 50% off. I got one. You're hearing my voice right now on the BH1S. So what are you waiting for, rock stars? Go to jzmic.com or click the link in the show notes below. Hey, rock stars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Lee Turner, joining us, Nashville cat, originally from Wisconsin, making great records, and here in studio with us. So are you ready to jam, Lee?
I'm ready to jam. Come on.
All right. So I know one of the things that you and I had a moment to talk about just before this podcast was that you just mentioned that you had been through a couple of, I think, iterations of studio and some life changes and journeys and stuff like that. And without digging any deeper with the question, I just wondered if you wanted to talk about some of your important experiences on your life and recording journey.
Absolutely. So this is a good one and a very important part in my life. So when I moved down to Nashville, I got married and had my first studio, and things were going really well, and I was learning and grabbing tools along the way, but things just weren't right. And I ended up getting a divorce. I got remarried again. And then this is where the game changer came in, is I got sober, and that was 6 years ago. This is a big, important part in my life, and it just relates to so many things in my life and my music now that I feel that I want to share this with people, because if I can share this with anybody that's listening that might be struggling right now, I just want to show you that it is possible to do and to work through, and things only get better when you tackle this thing. So I got sober 6 years ago. Everything was packed up in a storage unit. Then when I went through divorce number 2, I was able to say, all right, I'm 40 years old. My name is Lee. I want to have a studio in the house. I want to ride my bike and I want to make music, and play on the road and just enjoy life. So I found, God put in my path this incredible woman who I met at the airport, and that's a whole nother podcast right there. Her name is Tiffany, and we got married 2.5 years ago. And even when I met her, I was like, my name is Lee. I want to have a studio in the house. I like to ride my bike. Like, I was completely honest with her. And so we found this house. It's a little ranch with a walkout basement, and that's where I have my studio, and everything fit. Why do I bring this up? We are in an industry. I mean, alcohol and drugs are all around, but we're in an industry where sometimes it's used to create, quote unquote. And how do I navigate that with having a studio? And this is a definite, there's a group of guys that I have a Tuesday morning talk with, Michael Estocks and Jim Stewart's in it.
Oh, yeah.
Is
Stuart Richardson in that one too?
Yes, yes. And So we get together and we talk about, and we had a whole discussion about this, like how do you deal with people drinking in the studio or doing other things? My studio is completely clean. If people want to bring it in, fine, but they know my journey and most people are respectful. And the cool thing about it is I had this girl up from Australia, and she says to me, she says, this is the first time I've been in a studio where nobody's drank. And we've gotten so much done. And I was like, yes, and it just like made me happy. So
I know that feeling.
That's just really important. It's not, it's not everything of who I am, but it really leads into being honest with yourself, being honest with your clients. What are you able to handle? And on and on. So if anybody wants to reach out to me and talk about this even more, I mean, I'd love to talk about recording stuff, but if you are maybe even struggling with this yourself and I'm an open book, I'll talk to you.
Do you want to drop in a way for them to reach you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me through my website, which is www.22, so spell out 22.studio. Or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram and just instant message me there. That would be totally fine. I'm up for that.
Let me say it back again. So it's number 2, word 20, number 2, word
.studio.
.studio.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, groovy.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a couple of questions about that. Maybe before and after questions. So I totally agree with you. I understand, like getting into the music and the recording and everything. We're surrounded by. It's a party. It's a party atmosphere.
Exactly.
And party can mean lots of drinking. It can mean lots of drugs. It could mean a festive attitude, whatever it is for somebody.
Yeah.
But it's certainly understandable that that's where a lot of music and recording can be born from.
Sure.
But then as we get older too. Maybe you don't even have to get that much older,
right.
Depending on how intense it is for you. You may very well discover that I can't continue that, or that doesn't work, or that's damaging. And so you transition. What are some of the things that you described a client pointing out, wow, we got so much done on this session.
Yeah.
I've done a session where the first instrument that came in the door for the band was a giant cooler spilling with ice and beer. And I was like, good Lord,
Yeah, here we go.
And they're walking in, and it's my home studio too. And I was like, literally when it was in the home, and I was just like, oh my God, all right, well, and I was already at a place where I remember when I started out learning how to record, and I tried to join the band and all the fun and festivities.
Right.
And I got, they passed the pipe around, and I hit it too.
Absolutely.
And then I took one look at the patch bay, and I was like, oh, hell no. but and so for me, maybe it's in my personality that I, on some level was able to just say, okay, division of work and play here.
Right.
I'm going to, I'm not going for all that if I'm in work mode.
Right.
Where am I going with this? Oh, so they wheel in a thing of beer, and I'm not going to have a whole bunch of beer. I usually, might be one at the very end or something. But my point is, or my question is, what are some things that you noticed about talk about some improvements, or like, what are some things that feel like, wow, this feels pretty good, If that's a fair question to ask.
That's a fair question. Everything improved. I mean, time management improved. I mean, I remember working on mixes late night, and you wake up the next morning and they're not good. They were not good. Or playing piano. I would come up with these compositions late night, and they were just not great. And now I'm able to get up and function and have a clear head. And that's also one of the things that'll improve. Like if you're not using or drinking yourself, your attitude gets better. You're able to handle life as it comes along. One of the big things is it's sober, which means son of a bitch, everything's real.
Nice. I haven't heard that.
So
that's
groovy. It's just everything gets better for me.
Well, I do remember somebody that I knew many years ago who described to me quitting drinking, and he was like, well, first of all, you begin to sleep through the night.
Right.
You're no longer waking up in the middle of the night.
Right.
Because, and I was like, oh yeah, I never realized that, but sure enough, that is one of the things. And to wake up, and I remember when I was younger, just intentionally cutting out alcohol and caffeine for a month. And the experience at that point was like waking up super clear headed in the morning and ready to go. And it's like discovering a whole new portion of the day that didn't exist for me at that time.
And doing the thing that we're doing, recording, is not easy sometimes. And because music is, I always like to say, you've all heard the phrase, music's a universal language. And I don't think it really is, because everybody has an opinion. There's certain ways that, yes, we should achieve a drum sound like this, or we should mic a piano like this, or we talked about the B3. That's great. But there's so many other ways to deal with that. And another thing is this Yeti cup that I have my coffee in. I said, our clients are a lot like these Yeti cups, because you can pick them up and there's no temperature, and you don't know if inside that client's going to be hot that day or cold that day, or what they like, if they like more reverb, less reverb.
Nice.
And I think now I'm able to handle that. And I met a mixer here in town, and he was such a great attitude. And he goes, sometimes we're just like people that, we're no different than the guy serving McDonald's, so, do you want fries with that? Instead of saying, do you want fries with that? It's like, you want more reverb with that? You want more delay? Would you like less delay? Yeah. And I think just being clear-headed and being sober for me is like, I can handle anything in any situation, and clients can stress you out and not communicate with you and create all these problems. And I just feel like I'm better equipped to handle it now. So.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I keep coming back to, and I try and just talking about this with one of my interns, was encouraging the experience of getting in all the other shoes in the studio as quickly as possible as a learning experience. Because when you put yourself in the artist's shoes or the songwriter's shoes or the one who's responsible for this work that you're all creating together, and if it sucks, it's your fault,
Right.
Then you begin to understand it's like, man, it's really hard to know what to do and to know how to express whether you like it or don't like it, or, how to comment on a mix that somebody's playing for you. What do you think? You're like, I don't know. Hell, I have no clue. I've never done this song before, or whatever.
Right.
So,
or, there's another side where you fall in love with what you've done, and you fall in love with your mix, and then all of a sudden the client doesn't like something you've done, and it emotionally attacks you, and you're like, I'm selling everything. This is ridiculous. And that's where I say music isn't universal, because something that you love and you've poured your heart into, somebody else can not like. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like dating or something, right?
It is like dating. It's rough.
Yeah, you just got to put it out there.
Yeah.
And, maybe I know we're getting all meta with this, but, another takeaway is that the fact that the client didn't like that mix move you did, or that wasn't the right answer yet, doesn't in any way take away the value of how good that felt to come up with that mix move and the work and you put into it and your heart you put into it.
Right.
They can both exist simultaneously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's a good takeaway. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us,
Absolutely,
man. I appreciate that. And I think for some people, this may really resonate. And it doesn't matter whether you're younger or older or whatever. I mean, these are all just serious considerations.
Absolutely. And like I said, reach out if you need it.
All right, you ready to geek some more?
Come on, let's geek out.
All right.
I'll try.
Drums. You talked about your setup for recording drums, but dig into the mics. What mics do you like to use in your studio?
I had a Beta 52 on the kick drum. I switched that out for, when I first started, I had this Sennheiser package, and I've slowly gone back to some of that stuff. So the Sennheiser, I don't remember what it is, a 601 maybe or something on the kick.
On the kick? Okay, cool. And do you just use a single mic on the kick? Do you ever find it useful to have two?
No, I use a single kick. I've also recently and finally, I don't know if this is hard for me to admit, I got Trigger 2. So sample replacing.
It's all right, let's take a moment to appreciate what it used to be like versus what it is like now.
Thank you.
Do you remember how hard it used to be to try and add samples to a kick drum or a snare in a song?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did reminisce for a moment? What did you used to have to do to try and even add something to the drums?
I had to manipulate the track. For me, I never, if I was adding something, I might have taken a keyboard sample and like tried to line it up and copy and paste, and it never sounded good. But I really was going for this drum sound, and in a home setting, I don't think, I come really close, and especially with the Apollo stuff now, I'm coming really close. So I'm going to go back to that, and because I do believe that I have a great drum sound, and the Trigger 2 stuff just adds the icing on the cake. So I've got that on the kick drum, and then I've got these Sennheiser 903s, which was a mic that I bought a long time ago, and I got away from them. It's kind of like a 57. It's something that Sennheiser made for a short amount of time.
Is that this sort of the squarish one? Where
No, it's a regular, it looks like a vocal mic.
Okay, all right.
And I started using those on rehearsals at the house for vocalists, and I was like, why do I have these? And I looked them up on the internet, like, oh, they're like $200 nowadays. So people want them. So I threw those back on the snares. I've got the 421s on the toms. Then I've just got a pair of KSM 44s that I've had for years for overheads.
Those are small diaphragms, right?
The large ones.
Oh, the large ones. Okay.
Yeah, KSM 44s. And then in the back of the room, I've got a Rode NT4 stereo mic that is just facing the drums. And that's it.
And that just adds a little bit of space and sound around it. Now, do you find that you like to also use sort of like artificial reverbs as part of the drum sound by the time you're getting to mix it and stuff?
On the snare, yes. I find that if I squash the room a little bit and bring up the presence on that it gives it a little bit more body. And the only thing that really needs to be affected is the snare drum, yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing about snares. I guess, I don't know if it's worth asking the question, why do we need to add reverbs to snares? I think snare is just such a big deal in the kind of music that we do, backbeat and all that.
Absolutely. And I think snare is very important. And I have a Gretsch USA kit in the house. And then I bought a Craviato snare, which is a wooden snare, and then a Black Beauty, which are, there's your two choices. And I've had drummers come over and they just literally bring a stick bag because they know what I have sounds good. And I spent the money on good snares because you hear it throughout the song almost more than the vocal. I mean, it's so important. And with a snare, sometimes you need it to lengthen a little bit, and you need that sound and to do the thing that it does and decay. So putting a reverb with a slight delay on it also gives it a little bit more length in the track. It makes it pop out even a little bit more. That's real important. Yeah,
you just make a really good point, which you just say the snare is like, it's very audible throughout the whole mix. You're really going to hear it.
Yeah.
Which means maybe a simple translation is because you're going to hear it so much like the vocal, you're going to be very aware of its character, which is why having the right character and tone for the snare is important. And then also the reverb, lengthening it, making it fill the space of that pocket just right, and having a little bit of control over it at the mix time.
And then we can go the absolute other way. And now those, what are those? The company that makes the donuts that you put on there, the rings.
Oh, O-rings.
Yeah, that deaden the sound. Those are fantastic. And a lot of recordings nowadays are going to that really fat, like type of sound. And those, you flip one of those on there. Those are great. Tea towels on the toms, just deaden it and experiment with the sounds. I love that drums are going that way rather than everybody trying to compete with today's, in Nashville, the country sound, and even that's changing a little bit.
Right.
Which is
really fun. Here you are recording in a particular region, a location where you're surrounded by similar music, country. What's in other words, what's happening in country now and what's the style or whatever is totally relevant to what you're doing, whether you're going with it or against it or whatever. Right. It's like something sort of a mirror to see your music and productions in. And I guess that would be true for anybody, although it may not be true in a local fashion. For some people, it may only be true through the internet, because there might not be somebody else
Right.
If you're in the middle of wherever, it might not be another studio making the same kind of music locally, but it might be, you know, something that you hear on SoundCloud or on Bandcamp or whatever.
And I think one interesting thing that I'm finding lately is artists that are coming in and want to create a sound, or they just have great songs, and they're not trying to get Nashville. There's people that are trying to get the country deal, and everybody's moving to Nashville on a hope and a dream. And I did. And thank God it worked out. You know, I've been very successful. The phone kept ringing. So who am I to say what's right or wrong? But it seems like the more natural you can go when you're creating your music, and just let it be what it is and not try and be like exactly like somebody else and copy those people, the more real it gets. And I just had a conversation, and this is a little nugget too. I had a conversation yesterday with a guy in the management side, and he goes, "We can see right through that."
Interesting.
And
what does that mean?
What does that mean? Exactly. He goes, so when people are, I always say with my studio, it's music recorded with a purpose or, you know, with a reason. And you want to have your brand. So we can talk about your brand, right? Well, Joe here, he can be country, or he can be bro country, or he can be this. Record labels want to see one thing, and they want to go, this guy has this. So make your music about that. Don't be, you know, just be transparent, be who you are, and let that music speak rather than trying to be somebody else. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay. How do you, what's some of the stuff you go through with an artist if you're producing or about to make a record where you help identify what that thing is that's in the music, or, you know, what is that one thing that you would describe this artist or this record?
Sure. I think when I start to work with somebody, the first thing I say is, well, this is the tricky part. What do you want this to sound like? Who are your influences? And what that helps me do is that helps me pick players for the session, really, and mold.
Glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you how you choose musicians and how you help the artist choose musicians.
Just had an artist come down, and she wanted a Mellencamp-y type of song. Awesome. Immediately in my mind, I got phone numbers, like guys that I'm going to call who I know can play these parts and get the sound that she wants.
So she wants a Mellencamp-y sound, and you're going to offer her a ternary production.
Exactly. Exactly. I have these two girls that are in Belmont. They're finishing up this duet called Hailish that I'm really excited about. It's a 5-song EP that we did that it sounds like nothing that I've ever done before. We started talking about that. Here's the flip side of it. We started talking about what do they want this to sound like? And they were like, I don't know. We just want the songs to develop and go where they go. And that is the most real sounding thing I've done in a long time. It's pretty cool. So
nice. All right. Well, so let's talk more about choosing the musicians. Yeah. Because I know I struggle with that sometimes too. Mm-hmm. And I've started to come up with ways to, you know, empower. I like to help empower the artist to feel like they're choosing musicians for their record too. Is that part of your process? How do you make that all come together?
I think with my background being on the road for 20 some years, I've got a great pool of people, guys that play on the road and also during the week, like myself, record. I think that's a very standard thing to do. You know, we're all trying to make money and work. So I pick people like, another instance, a client said, well, I want to do this Kelly Clarkson type song. Well, immediately I'm going to call the rhythm section for Kelly Clarkson and get Lester and Kyle in there. I mean, that's a no brainer, and it's so
awesome.
Easy. Guitar player, this last session, she was like, I want a Joe Perry, blah, blah, blah. Immediately somebody came to mind.
You're like, I'm calling Joe Perry.
Yeah, right. I should have. You know, I go through my phone and people that I met on the road and networking and that I've developed with over years, you know, to find that every once in a while, the artist will also bring in a new kid or somebody that I haven't played with before. And I'm like, wow, they're great, you know, and I stockpile them and use them when I can.
How often do you bring in somebody that you haven't worked with before as far as a musician? Do you sometimes see a musician play on stage and go, oh, I like the way they play, and then just invite them in on a session?
And yeah, I do. I try and remember like what their vibe was. And also, I mean, using that word vibe is a great thing. In my studio, I try and get people that are a good hang. You know, I want the singer-songwriter client to be comfortable with the band and feel like the band is invested in their song that they're spending their hard-earned money in and making. I want them to feel comfortable and proud of the players that were on the session. I'm a very positive guy, and I want people that are around me to be positive and bring those vibes. Definitely don't want the jaded Nashville musicians around.
Right, that are just phoning it in.
I recently had a...
They don't exist.
No, what? What are you talking about? Is this thing almost done? No, it's, positive, vibey people. And, you know...
It reminds me, too, of something that I've noticed happen. So if an independent artist, if you put together a really awesome band, and some of those musicians have like street cred, you know, they've got credits of who they've played with. I've seen an artist turn around and finish their record, and part of their promotion is featuring these musicians who have played with so-and-so. And it's like, that's actually can be a huge win for the artist to get people to, you know, earballs on their record.
No, absolutely. That's a huge part. You know, so-and-so from Kenny Chesney's band, or Jason Aldean's band, or, you know, Kelly Clarkson or Darius Rucker's band. That's huge. And it's another way for the artist to connect to their crowd, because these people listen to that music. That's an instantaneous name that they recognize. And all of a sudden, that's another tag that they can put on their music that, oh, maybe they kind of sound like this, and I'm excited about it, and I want to go hear what they sound like. In the world of social media, that opens up a whole nother door. I'm all for posting stuff on social media. I think it's a great tool, and it's actually, social media has gotten me more work than my website that I pay for.
We might need to talk about that.
That was huge.
Let's talk about website. Let's talk about social media. What does that all that mean?
So
why do we care?
I had a guy, a PR guy, who helped me out, say, you got to get a website. You got to get a website. So I spent the money. It's up. It's rocking. I don't update that as much as my social media. People don't look at it. Traffic's low. I spent a lot of money on it, and it's just something that sits there. Great for doing this podcast. And you guys can all take a look. I'm going to put new pictures up and get my music updated, you know, and I'm just being very honest about that. Or you can find me on social media, and you can see instantaneously like what's happening. You can go to my Instagram, 222.studio Instagram, or on Facebook, and see what we're doing. And it's easier for me to post right away. So I started posting, and what that does is, you know, and it might be corny to some people, and I'm okay with that. Y'all can unfollow me. That's totally cool, and that's what it's about. But I'm going to be like, hey, today I'm in the studio. I'm working with Tara Bella. It's this country duo, laying down keyboards. A, I'm proud of it, and B, it's really cool to show people what I'm doing, and C, all of a sudden the phone's going to start ringing. Hey, Lee's doing keyboards, or he's a great B3 player. And it's another way to network that we didn't have back in the day, and nowadays it's readily available. So I find, and I don't post a lot. I hope I'm not annoying, but I post, you know, like.
Is there such thing as too much posting?
Yes, there is. But there's definitely, like, if I can a couple times a week check in and just keep people like, hey, Lee is actively doing stuff. 222 Studio is really doing well. And also it shows my progress and that I'm growing, and it's exciting. So yeah, I think social media is a great tool. And the artists that are coming in, they ask me now, what do I do with this music? Which is a great question, because the music model has changed drastically. You know, we're not selling as much music as we have in the past. So how do I monetize this? How do I make money? How do I build? And one powerful way is social media. And I think management, the same guy that I had the conversation with the other day, he said social media followings, it's the first thing they look at. So if you only have 40 viewers or 40 people following you, or, thousands, that takes time to grow. And that,
it's still a measurement of
I feel,
of audience size and all that, right?
Yeah. And as the artist, you can put clips out. I wouldn't personally drop the whole song, but if you drop 20 seconds out and then say, hey, go buy it here, I mean, that's powerful tool also. Yeah. But yeah, for myself, I've definitely seen my business grow through social media more so than a website.
Well, so I would offer that a website is like a home base that you can intentionally go visit. So for example, it's still really useful in that if somebody is like, oh, Lee's an interesting cat, I want to go see what he's doing, then it gives somebody, it's an opportunity for you to have a player up there with your music or some video links or whatever, where it's like.
No, it's a definite more professional representation of yourself.
But the social media is the story.
I think so. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. But, and then there's also rock stars. You may have heard my interviews with Chris Graham. Brian Hood hopefully will be on the podcast at some point too. And he has a wonderful course. Their brand is the Six Figure Home Studio Podcast. And Brian has a wonderful course called the Profitable Producer. And in that, they talk about things like websites. And, I think they suggest that a website is a place to have like one call to action and a form on there that people fill out to contact you, to work with you and stuff like that. So that can be a cool way to think of a website too. And I'll put in a little plug too. If you're curious to check out, Brian's got a great free webinar that talks about some of these topics too. Just go to rsrockstars.com/profprod, PROFPROD, and that link will take you right to it. I wanted to make it easy so I could remember to name drop it.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, so all right, cool. Well, website, social media. So how do you find that people tend to reach out to you if they see you on social media and they're like, oh, that's cool? Is it just they just send you a social media message and now you got a conversation going?
Instant message, and figure out if what they want to do is for real. And usually at that point, they're ready to talk. They're ready to do something. So I'll just give them my phone number and we'll have a conversation over the phone.
So in other words, easy.
Easy. Yeah. I'm working in May. I've got a girl coming over from Holland.
Oh, cool.
I've had a girl come over from England. I've had another person come up from Australia. And it's just crazy that
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So it's pretty powerful.
It's been a minute since I've worked with somebody who's traveled from overseas to come make a record with me.
Yeah. The first experience I had that was working with this German girl. Her name was Katja, and she was singing in German and country songs all in German.
Wow.
And the first time I went to work on her vocal, I accidentally put a de-esser on it. She goes, no, you've taken away all my, all the important stuff in there. I was like, okay, instantly take that off.
Sorry, 9. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that topic. So
sure. What
are some things you've learned? Obviously, that was one of them. What are some other things that you've learned about working with an artist who travels from afar to come work with you? What are the things that you've learned to make sure you provide above and beyond, typical, pick the right mic, that make that a great experience for an artist coming in? Do you have to like help find them an Airbnb? Is that part of the vibe?
Point them in the right neighborhood to stay. Sometimes you might have to point them in direction of restaurants and stuff like that.
How long does somebody typically stay to come do something? Is it like they might be here for a month or just for a week?
I had one that wanted to try and be here for a month, and then they realized that we could knock out her vocal in a week, and she didn't have to be here. And the beauty of the internet and Dropbox is like you can listen to mixes from anywhere. Still you get that studio experience, but you don't have to be here. I just provide them with things to get up and running. Just like when clients come into the studio, I like to have menus ready. I like to have the pizza the pizza place phone number ready to go, coffee ready to go, and just trying to have everything ready that a client would need. Be prepared for that. Do a little homework ahead of time, so you know, you look like you know what you're doing, and just it makes it for a great experience for them.
Are there any challenges to getting paid by a client who's coming from another country?
Yes, and this is very important, I think, across the board. Be very clear and be very honest about the service that you provide, the time that you're going to put into it, especially, and I'm talking for people that have never recorded before or maybe have just done a small project.
It's a good reminder. When you work with somebody who hasn't done this before, you have a whole lot of educating to do that's above and beyond what you normally do.
I just did an estimate the other day where I listed out my hours, everything from top to bottom through sending it to the mastering guy and getting it back and explaining what it all is. It's a lot, but yet it justifies and shows your client what you're actually doing to earn your paycheck, rather than, oh, dude, we're just going to show up and record. Well, it's not really that easy. There's a lot that goes into this. As you all know, being recording rock stars yourselves, this is the small stuff that makes it easier. And I find that when I skip over that little fact or that little detail of explaining all this stuff to the client, sometimes in the back end, yes, getting paid can be a little difficult because another thing, you might have a client that finishes a mix in 2 days, right? And then you have this client that finishes a mix over 2 months because they're back in their homeland or whatever you want to say. Yeah. Okay, I'm technically done. Now you're dragging your feet. Can I get paid? Right. So yes, set those boundaries before you start. So that way there's a clear indication of when we reach this point in the mix, I should be paid X amount of dollars. Yeah. I think that's just smart. And then it takes away all the weirdness.
When you talked about it's not like we're just going to get together and record. Well, it is like that when you're working with people that you record with all the time or that do this every day, and it's and you can kind of relax into it. Mm-hmm. But it's just this constant reminder, over communicate, even with the people you work with regularly. And but especially with the people that you haven't worked with before.
Yeah, I mean, over communicate. It's great. We're all human. We're all going to forget stuff, but as long as you put that communication out there, life is a lot easier.
Yeah, and I'm going to also add to that a reminder that over communicating doesn't just mean write a thorough email. It means send that email 3 times until you get a response that it didn't get lost. My incoming email, those emails move down that page so fast on Gmail. It's like if they don't get a star on it and I don't intentionally go back and look at that star, it can be easy to miss it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, that's the lesson that I have to keep learning, is remembering that communicating through the internet is, you don't always know what the experience of the other person is that you're communicating it with. It's like your client, description of you don't know what mood they're in. Yeah. You don't know if the person you're talking to, or you may not know initially, if there's somebody that sees every email that comes in, somebody that rarely ever sees an email that comes in, somebody that sees it, but it disappears quickly and they need that, they're just very busy and they need to be reminded. Yeah. So don't, my strategy is over communicate until they ask you to communicate a little less. And then you've communicated, And you're like, cool, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you are ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I mastered my own record, Skadoosh, using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. These techniques would work for you in whichever DAW you are using right now. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads to mix in your own studio and even include in your mixing portfolio if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to Mixmaster thegearbundle.com to get started for free now, and look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Cool. All right. Well, let's see. What haven't we talked about that we should still talk about here? You want to talk about producing vocals?
Sure.
That's an important part, right?
That is an important part, producing vocals.
What you talked about using a couple of cool plugins on the way in for a vocal chain, an 1176 into an LA2A. It's a great classic combo, and it sounds great. Right. And there's a reason why we're still talking about it to this day.
Because it works.
Yeah. And what about choice of vocal mic on the way in? How do you typically use the same one, or do you like to choose the right one for a singer?
I have two go-tos that I like to use. I have a Neumann U87 that is just on the stand all the time. There for a while, I was using a Kiwi made by the Blue Microphone Company, and that's really great, but I found out it just did something EQ to the vocal that I really didn't care for long-term working on the vocal. That U87 is like rock solid.
Yeah, U87 it's a classic large diaphragm condenser. It's been around for ages, and it's actually, I feel like it's sort of, it has a good mid-range that comes forward, but it's also a little bit like, it's not bright and sizzly on the top, right? It's sort of almost dark on top. Yeah,
no. Seems to work really well for what I'm doing. And I think an important part about, the recording a vocal is the vocal performance itself. Getting your client or your singer to be comfortable. I mean, going into the studio is exciting, and I forget sometimes because I'm in that world all the time. I'm very relaxed, but somebody who's saved up their pennies to come in, or this is a dream of theirs, gets really anxious, and all of a sudden you're over singing, and there's these things that crop up in the studio that you as the producer, you hitting the recording button, have to kind of deal with and talk with them and work with them in a manner that makes them feel very relaxed and
well, they may have been singing along to speakers and guitars all this time and not been in headphones now.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you are able to do to bring a singer back into the right tone with their voice and the right volume and level and not be over singing?
First thing I'll do is I'll go in and I'll check out definitely where their headphone mix is at. Just make sure that they don't have it cranked, so loud, or the opposite, so quiet. Actually take their headphones and listen to them. And a lot of times there'll be adjustments that can be made, and like, oh, I didn't hear that out in the control room, or whatnot, or just a reassurance that, yes, this is what it should sound like. Slipping an earphone off always helps. It just gives it a little bit more of that, when you sing in the shower, that natural reverb, you're hearing yourself like you normally sing.
Yeah, that's the one ear off trick for the singer, where one ear is in a headphone, the other ear doesn't have the headphone on it, so they hear themselves naturally in the room.
And make sure their headphones aren't cranked, so you're not getting a lot of bleed coming through that. And then just, taking your time with it, and just make sure they're emoting, doing what the song calls for. I had an interesting singer come back one time, or an interesting thing where a singer came back. She took the tracks to her vocal teacher, and her vocal teacher said, "You weren't smiling on any of this." And I said, I heard this and I just laughed. I was kind of new at this. I was like, "What do you mean you weren't smiling?" She goes, "No," she said she couldn't hear me smile. And I was like, "All right, well, let's re-record it and have you smile." Sure enough, I can hear the difference, and it changes the way your mouth is shaped. So if there's a passage where you need the singer to sound a little brighter or happier, or just get that in the front of the mouth instead of just laying here, have them smile. And there's just different tips and tricks, that you can use.
What I've been doing is I'm working on my own EP right now. I have set up a video camera to videotape every single vocal performance, every overdub I do. So coming soon, rock stars. Or maybe it's out now by the time this is out.
Right on.
But but it gives me a chance to see what I look like when I'm singing. And that is really eye-opening, which is really kind of a pun, because what I discovered is that I have a tendency when I'm singing to squint and look like I'm, in the bathroom when I'm singing. And I'm like, and if you see that, you're like, oh man, first of all, am I doing that on stage? Second of all, obviously, like the physical attributes that we have are translated into what comes out of the sound too. And then I'm thinking like, all right, so then I go back out and I sing some more and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be conscious of like keeping my eyes open and making eye contact. Or if I close my eyes, it's like a relaxed, instead of like a squinting, pinching kind of thing.
Well, and this is a cool thing too, talking about social media. I'm sure you're filming this to put out clips or, so it does two things.
Right, exactly.
That's a great thing, the video camera and watching yourself.
Well, I'm actually going to be taking the whole process of recording my EP and mixing it and turning that into a mix course.
Oh, wow.
That's all the content for it too. So that's my intention here.
Very cool.
I'm on the line, on the hook now because I put it out there publicly. So, but that's what I'm heading towards.
Yeah,
and it's super fun to do too.
Cool.
I'm having a blast doing it. But yeah, the way that you're physically, the way that your body is acting when you're singing affects your singing. And I always encourage singers that I work with to not stand stiff like it's a formal event, but like move and express, use body language and hand gestures and movement to express the song, because I think that stuff comes through. Now that can also have the effect of overdoing it a little bit and causing people to miss the note and not hit it.
Right.
But it's some balance in the middle of all those things that gets the right stuff. Now, singing on my own stuff, again, I'm experiencing doing, 4 or 5 takes. I'm like, that's good enough for now, or whatever. Or I might need something else, but I don't know what it is that I need yet.
Right.
As a producer, what are some things you've learned about making sure that you have all the right bits and pieces and that you're not, when you go to comp it, you're not, some notes are just out of tune or those long notes have a wobble in them where you don't have a good one, stuff like that.
When I'm going for a vocal performance, I like to do the comping as it's going down. So if we hear something that's bad, I like to fix it. Cool thing in Logic is, they have that where you just swipe the right take. So if I know that there's one close, I'll have the artist sing it over and make sure that I have at least 2 good passes. There's probably going to be some underneath that, but 2 gives me the other option that when they're home listening to their mix, they're like, I didn't say an S on this. And I'll be like, I got it, or I can fly it in somewhere. Words are pronounced correctly. You might have to do some tuning, but just make sure they're in the ballpark. Don't ever leave a session and go, I can fix all this, because that's a lot of work. Have the singer sing it and it's going to sound more natural.
What's a normal amount of vocal takes that you might be looking at later to
I think it depends on the singer. There might be some sections where you get it twice. There might be a bridge where you're hitting it 17, 18 times.
Right, okay, cool.
And there's just that certain emotion that you're trying to reach and PowerPoint in the song that's hard for them. And that's when you really have to push the gas pedal and get them to perform. And not all those takes are going to be great. So it definitely depends. I see, when I'm mixing down, there's certain sections that might have 2 or 4 or 6, and there's certain sections that have 17, 18 takes to it. It just kind of depends. Another thing that's really great is do all that, and I really work hard getting the comp done while the artist is in there, and everybody's different. Have them listen to it, and then have them go sing the whole thing one more time.
Right.
Straight through, top to bottom. And that's a great way. So now you already have your comp vocal that you just did with them in there, and you have another great vocal, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to sing it better than they just.
Yeah, they just learned the shit out of the song.
They just learned the shit out of it. You're exactly right.
Thank you for saying shit on my podcast.
Yeah, I finally got to swear.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Cool, man. Cool.
And then one thing so now we've got the vocal recorded and it's in the box and you're working on it. You've got your 1176 and your LA2A. What if you don't have those? Like, what if you're on a small system and money's an issue, whatever, and you want some great plugins? Or you have a client that's like, I need this mix now, and you don't have time to mix down. I found the Greg Wells one knob series is outstanding.
What is it, voice centric or something like that?
Voice centric, yeah. It's outstanding. And there's times where I'll go to that. I'll add a little bit of something else onto it, but the delay times fall right in time with your DAW. The reverb is great. There's a doubler on it. And you turn this one knob up and it just gives you, I don't know what it is, tape saturation, EQ, all that good stuff. If you're looking for a down and dirty, that's an awesome one. Yeah. Another one is his piano one. It's
okay, cool.
Brilliant. And I use that all the time.
Describe the effects that it has on, if you put it on a piano. So this might be on the stereo DPA mic'd upright, for example?
Exactly. Put it on that. And let's say you want to change it and make it more intense or brighten it up. It has a knob where you just turn it and it brightens and kind of thins it out, which is awesome. A quick EQ for letting it sit in the mix, knocking out all that crap that...
the big mystery piano for me is the Bowie pianos, the David Bowie sound, which is just like this bright. It's really bright, but it's not nasty, harsh or anything like that.
No. This kind of does that, and there's a doubler on it also that just works.
Double the piano?
Doubler on the piano. It kind of gives it a little
Phil Spector,
little
wall sound.
A little Elton John-ish at times. I don't use it all the time, but those are really cool. And Billy Decker just came out with his plugins, his bus glue.
Oh, no way. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, Billy Decker is killing it. And I gave him a shout out the other day on social media.
I got to invite Billy to come on the show.
You should. He's a great positive
he's a monster,
person. Yeah. His bus glue is great. I've thrown it on a quick mix that I did for drums. His electric guitar one's great. Acoustic guitar is great. And on keys, it's killer. I said it out on social media. I'm like, Billy, everybody always forgets about the keyboard player. Thanks for giving us some love. So it was really cool. So those are some quick like bus glue type stuff that really can help your mix out. If you're new to the recording and you don't understand everything or have the money to get into all this stuff that sometimes we talk about, those are great tools to get you up and running and sounding like a rock star.
All right, groovy, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, that answers the future question here about a cool software tool for the studio.
I would say that, yeah.
What about tuning vocals? You said you might want to do some tuning. Is that part of the process? What are some of the tools that you like to use?
It is.
Where can you go wrong?
All right. Yes. Tuning is just, for me, it's like using compression. I think it's great. You don't want to hear it. Obviously, there's times when, yes, you want that effect of being overtuned. But how do you get it to sound natural? A, grab a good performance. B, if you can't do that, you got to get into it and figure out what notes maybe you need to move. Maybe you're slapping Antares on the whole track and just moving the knobs where it's catching certain notes just fine. But what happens if you have a singer with a lot of vibrato and Antares is just basically flipping you off? I've had that. And I was like, oh no. And the singer just went back down to Florida. Logic has a great tuning function into it where you can go in and individually, select each word, or you can the whole track and put it on match perfect pitch, or I think it's just perfect pitch. Then you can blow up the waveform so you can see it really big, and it's amazing. It's a little bit like Melodyne where you can slide the notes up and down, and it does it in real time. But it's right within Logic, so you don't right within.
When you
Logic.
press play on Logic, you're right where you want to be. You can see the tracks next to each other and stuff too.
Absolutely. I love Logic, and I think it's a great tool.
Yeah, I think Logic is super cool. I still just only dabble in it every time I'm messing with it. I never feel like a Logic expert. But it's super cool. Do you want to talk any more about Logic and how you use it, or any stuff that's cool with it?
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of blew my mind when I reopened the studio, quote unquote, was my old Windows XP machine was outdated. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go get these new plugins and this is fabulous and blah, blah, blah. And I can't get it because it's outdated. So I upgraded. I'm using in the studio now 3 Apollos, the brand new Apollos. the X8P. I've got 2 of those, and then an 8X, and then a Mac Mini. So I'm running Mac, and Logic is an Apple product.
Mac Mini, does it have to be a brand new Mac Mini?
No,
is it an older Mac Mini?
2014, and it's working really well. The processing power is enough for what I do. I may upgrade, and I went, this was another Michael Estock tip. Get a solid state drive.
Yeah.
Spend the money. And
I'll give a shout out to OWC, our sponsor on the podcast.
Right, there we go.
They make, I upgraded solid state drives on my Mac that is recording us right now is a 2009 Mac Pro.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And it has all solid states in it. And it's blazing, you know?
Yeah. So I dug into Logic, and it handles everything that you need it to do. And Logic even does sound replacement. We were talking about that earlier with Trigger 2. It can do drums, which is really cool, and it's really good.
Drummer track.
Do
do you mess around with that at all?
I've tried, and I
think of it as a song sketching tool.
Absolutely.
Pretty fun.
Loops or that type of thing. I tried to use it on one client's thing, and she was like, no, I would like real drums, please. And I was like, okay. And then I listened to it about 2 weeks later and was like, that's not really great. So it's good. It's really good.
It's really fun.
It's
so
great.
Quick. Like sketching ideas in Logic is so fast, which is really fun.
Yeah.
And then, it is fun to plug your guitar in and have like 5 bazillion different over the top guitar sounds.
Amazing. Yeah.
What about some basic navigational stuff? That's where I always get tripped up, because I know how to get from point A to point B in Pro Tools quickly, but I'm always a little lost in Logic. For example, do you use keys on your keyboard to zoom in and out? Do you, if you're zoomed in close, can you jump over to the left end of a region or a clip? Absolutely. Or what do you call them in Logic anyway?
Yeah, markers are one thing that I set up right away. They're in my template.
Like song markers, like verse, chorus, bridge.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got them all labeled and in approximate areas. I mean, intros 4 bars and this and that, 16 bars, 8 bars, whatever. So the first time I'm going through, when the drummer counts off, I usually try and start them in the same spot, lay a marker down for verse 1, verse 2, and on and on. Then over where my numbers are on the keyboard on the right-hand side, those quickly jump to each marker.
Oh, cool.
So I can go, verse 2 is number 2. Yeah. Bam. I hit that, and then I hit I think it's a backspace key over here, and it jumps back 2 measures. So that's a great tool also, starting people at the exact same spot. So I use those quick keys. Sorry,
let me clarify that. Starting people at the exact same spot. Rockstars, I think you're talking about
doing punch-ins.
When you're doing a punch-in. Yeah. We've talked about this on the podcast. I think Brandon Bell maybe just brought it up too. The importance of pre-roll and having a consistent pre-roll. And in Nashville, 2 bars of pre-roll is maybe like a good target.
2 or 4,
leading up to
depending if it's quick. What that does is it sets your performer up for success, because they know exactly where you're going to be starting.
Performer self-help.
Exactly right. 101. Because let's say it's a guitar solo or they're the one lick that is really difficult and they want to get. The last thing you want to do is jump in and be like, ready, go. Give them those 2 measures and consistently give them those 2 measures. So that's a great tool.
Every
Logic.
Future intern, please listen to this segment of the podcast and learn that right away.
Yeah. So I use that. And then also the cut and paste, is TI, and cut and fade, or the fade is TA, And I learned
TI, so T is sort of like slices a region or something like that?
T is your tool selector, and then I would be the slicer.
Nice.
A is fade for some reason. And I just learned all the shortcuts. So yeah, and another great tool that I have along with this is the Slate, the MT2, the monitor, touchscreen monitor.
Oh, part of the Raven? So
Raven, exactly, the Raven.
Okay, cool.
So I've got a trackpad and then the Raven and then my controls on Logic, and I'm just like TA and I slice it, or T1, TI and slice it, and TA and fade it and wipe my finger across the thing, and it just...
Nice, man. I I've seen the Raven and I've like messed with it for a second, but I haven't actually used it on a session.
Yeah.
So what are the things that tend to go really quickly using something like the Raven?
The Raven's great for what I do because jumping back and forth between Logic and the console, you do that all on one.
When you say console, you mean the Universal Audio virtual console,
yes,
right?
Virtual console. So if I have players playing on that, I can reach for the mixer really quick. I don't have to mouse around. I can literally go to the drummer, like let's say they need more kick, punch, and
so you just grab the fader,
grab a fader.
Up and down
now go to Logic and grab fader on Logic. Whereas when I had a control surface, I wasn't able to do one of those things. So it really integrates.
Do you use the kind of batch commander like features where you can automatically make 8 vocal tracks ready to go and stuff like that?
Sorry, Slate. I could never get it to work. I didn't get it to work.
I have batch commander and I'll use it here only for the most mundane tasks, but I haven't incorporated it into big complex stuff. But I probably should. I always feel like I should.
But yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you ever used the Eventide H3000 through your time, but that was like one of those, hardware units in the rack that was like deep levels of programming. And I just always had this feeling like, man, I should really learn that one day.
Right.
And I think the funny takeaway from that is just a reminder that like, we are going to be surrounded by stuff like that in the studio. As a keyboard player, you certainly, I'm confident that you probably have synthesizers where you've been like, man, I should really learn all the menus in that synth one day.
Dive in, yeah.
And it's okay that we don't have to know every single thing there is to know about everything.
Yeah.
You just get into the levels that you actually need for your sessions.
Need and use, and you learn the plugins, learn Logic or learn Pro Tools, and learn it so that you're proficient and quick on what you need to know to make your clients happy. I think that's really important. The last thing I want to do is slow down the creative process. And I spent many hours learning Logic. I spent many hours learning Nuendo. And just set yourself up, record yourself, make a dumb song. It doesn't matter. I'll make a song about our cats or something like that which are actually really good songs, but that's besides the point. One of the featured songs is Cat Stepping on My Balls, which is going to be a huge hit. I'm sure of it,
That's pretty funny. I actually remember I got up in the middle of the night once, a couple of decades ago at least, and wrote a song on my 4-track about walking down the hall and stepping in a cat turd between my toes. Because we lived in a place where the cat was roamed free to do what they wanted. I'm of course describing the shared roommate situation that we all go through early on,
But what that does is creating these little songs or just throwaway songs. I always name them something like test, delete after finished, and just practice and different scenarios, practice punch-ins, practice this and that, until you get a little bit quicker in it and it'll relax yourself. I always used to go into sessions just sweating, just that nervous.
I remember that beginning.
Sweat, like you're running around the room trying to.
You can't sleep the night before.
No, and you're getting everything set and then the client comes in and it's maybe like 68 degrees and you're in a cold sweat and it's just nerve-wracking. I think anything you can do to prepare to get the session ready, to get yourself ready for those different situations that are going to happen,
It's a good reminder. I mean, I always say that the greatest skill of engineering is the skill of the workaround.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter whether you got the oldest stuff or the newest stuff. Something will not work. Something won't work the way it's supposed to. And your real skill is not knowing how to have gotten it right, but knowing how to go right around that obstacle and keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
On every session.
Yeah.
Because in the end, all that matters is that session flow and you getting it done,
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we're coming up on the end here, but let me jump into some of our closing questions. We'll just kind of blast through some of the jam session questions. When you started out in recording, what was holding you back?
Money.
All right.
Money was definitely technology, but now it is technology's definitely more affordable. Knowledge of how to do something, how to mic up a Leslie, like what we talked about today. Nowadays, such a great tool is YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, anything you want. I mean, of course, you're going to find some bad, but like with Logic, anything that I was trying to like, how do I do this? Bam, you go to YouTube.
Did you ever watch Logic Pro Ninja?
I don't know.
Or SF Logic Pro Ninja?
I'm not sure if I've
he's been a guest on the podcast.
Yeah,
awesome, dude.
So that's, nowadays, that's just, ask. And so, yeah, that probably slowed me down a little bit. Yeah.
Let's very briefly, I'll touch on the topic of money, because you mentioned that's obviously a universal concern for a lot of people starting out. But you pointed at, very quickly, you mentioned, I didn't do a big leap in, I accumulated things. Yes. And that's what I did too.
Oh,
and
good.
By the time I sort of created this space, I already had most of the studio gear,
Yep.
And it was just for the first decade of my career, everything that I earned just went back into, eBay.
Right. Right. Totally.
and it was back when eBay was the source for all that stuff.
Right.
And just accumulating. So just a reminder, rock stars, you don't have to jump in with all. In fact, you got it easy now. All you got to do is save up for that one Apollo, and bam, you got most of a studio ready to go with the laptop.
I had a client come over that played a bass part on her keyboard. The tools are there, so it's, I don't know, just
Well, how about some of the best advice you remember receiving?
There's no right or wrong way to do something. And when I first started recording, I talked to this guy. He played trumpet with Johnny Cash. His name was Jack Hale. That name just came back to me.
Nice.
And Jack really helped me, find some Mackie speakers to get going. And his big thing was, the other day we were recording a guitar part, and the guitar was in the bathroom. And they actually put a microphone down in the bowl of the toilet. And he goes, it did something to the guitar sound, and it was really cool. And I was like, okay, note. So that little nugget kind of sticks in the back of my head.
I hope it wasn't the vocal mic.
No, I hope it wasn't the vocal mic either. That would have been really shitty.
Oh, boy.
Another one, Dave Grohl talks about in Sound City, I love Dave Grohl and Foo
Good name
Fighters.
drop, man. Good name drop.
Oh, my God. And they talk about plugging stuff into the wrong insert sometimes, and, magic just kind of happens. So there's no right or wrong way. And if you can get great sounds and just enjoy doing what you're doing.
I think, the idea of plugging something into the wrong thing and accidentally getting a great sound. I mean, that's Glyn Johns describes his whole Glyn Johns miking technique as that.
Wow.
They turned a guitar mic around and it was accidentally over the tom.
Yeah.
Voila, we have 50 years of drum recording,
Yeah.
But there's also just the intent to try and go do stuff wrong, and sometimes that doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes you're just like, it's a big pile of crap, and I didn't make a good sound.
Exactly.
But one thing I've seen certainly repeatedly, I remember hearing stories about like Brian Eno would like hook up these daisy chains of things, and I'll do stuff in here sometimes and surprise the shit out of myself. Is just like taking that one effect and then go into another effect and into something else and into something else, and then go into, Pro Tools or whatever. And you can create these sounds that you had no idea you were even capable of. This sounds so cool,
Yeah.
So hook a lot of shit up, rock stars.
Do it.
That's it. In the physical world, do you think you get more success doing that in the physical world of stuff than in the plugin world? Like if you hook up 10 plugins, does it turn into a pile of doo-doo faster than if you hook up 10
I think you
keyboards?
Can overdo it. I think in the physical world, you can do some cool stuff, happy accidents.
Yeah. Run stuff into guitar amps through pedals and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we digress.
Okay.
You've already shared some great recording tips. If you got another one, let me know. But otherwise, I'll jump to a favorite hardware tool for the studio. Something physical that you're always glad you got around on sessions.
The Apollo, not the Apollo, the Avalon, my 737.
Oh yeah, the old 737.
I do that on the front end. I love everything else. I'm pretty much in the box nowadays. But I do that on the front end of the vocal. It's just something about grabbing a knob and having
It's one of our first channel strips.
Really. Was it? Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, and it's tube and it sounds great.
Right. A vocal that I just did recently, the verses she sang really quiet, and then the choruses were belting, and I was able just to grab a knob and physically, change that. That's probably my favorite hardware.
Nice.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so let's jump to our final question. This one is hypothetical. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine.
Yes.
We're going to go back, find young Lee.
Yeah.
I guess you just finished your farm chores up in Wisconsin. You're grabbing your guitar. You say, "Listen, Lee, before you go down this road of recording, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio." Yourself one day, you were like, "What's a studio?" No,
right.
Well, assuming you knew what a studio is, what advice would you go back and give yourself if you could?
Wow. I think I would say be honest with yourself and your time and experiment and really learn why things work. Dig into people, dig into how people work in your workflow. What do I mean by that? Like, just know what you're comfortable with, know what you're capable of, and not being afraid to taking risks on top of that. And then in the recording, young Lee, you should probably compare your mixes to other mixes before you take them to your car.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So you'll find out a little sooner.
Yeah.
You lose a good 15 minutes every time you take the mix to the car.
Good Lord. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, Lee, thanks so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars, dude. Absolute pleasure to hang out with you and get to know you and your music and stuff. Let the Rockstars know how they can find you online and learn more about you. And where should they go follow you on social media and all that?
Absolutely. You can find me on 222.studio, and that's the number 2, spell it out 20, and the number 2.studio. Or you can find me on Instagram, 222 Studio. And you can find me on Facebook on the same, or you can just look up Lee J. Turner. So
nice. And Rockstars, if you need to make your next best record, country album, whatever,
I'd love to help.
You ready to fly across the world and come make a cool record?
World. We can do it remote. Come on, we can do a bunch of different things. I love positive, fun people who are looking to make music. So, or if you need keyboard tracks and you would like me to play on your next record, I'm totally down for that. And I do a lot of that stuff too. So.
Or if you just need a super hot band that is going to look really great on the sticker of your next album.
Exactly. Call me. Text me.
Awesome,
whatever.
Dude.
Message me.
Thanks so much for being here, and look forward to seeing you around the studio again.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. Also, remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with these weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free mixing course at mixmasterbundle.com. Look for the link in the show notes. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio, all totally free. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.